Okay, so we left off last week before Shabbos, Thursday night, about kablonis. Paying a guy to do a job for you, a specific job. We used an example of your car breaks down, you need a mechanic, you bring your car to the mechanic, you want him to fix it over Shabbos. We said that there are two necessary conditions for one to be allowed to do that. One is that you have to make up a price, ktsitsa, it's called ktsitsa, kotzatz. You have to set the amount that you're going to pay. And the other is that you can't have him do it on Shabbos. You have to make it clear that you can do it Friday, you can do it Matzah Shabbos. We said if you tell him that I need to carve on Matzah Shabbos, and you know it's a big job and there's no way he's going to be able to finish that job unless he works on Shabbos, that's basically you're telling him that you should work on Shabbos. So these are the two conditions, kotzatz, and you have to make sure that he doesn't have to work on Shabbos. Then we spoke about Marazayin. Again, every time you have a heter for a guy to do a malacha for you on Shabbos, you have to be concerned with another issue. Besides the issue of Amir al-Akim, there's another issue involved, Marazayin, which is, we spoke, it shouldn't be taken lightly. There are a few aterim. You could avoid Marazayin, either by doing it, making sure the guy does it in his shop, and he closes, the trisim or whatever it is, and no one can look inside and notice your car in there being worked on Shabbos. Or do it mechutz l'tchum, right? If it's a house, if it's something which is mechuber, you can't actually, enclose the area. So if it's mechutz l'tchum of a Hilchos Yisroel, we said also there's no problem of Marazayin. We mentioned that some place can say that nowadays mechutz l'tchum is a problem of Marazayin because there are non-affiliated Jews that do travel on Shabbos and there might be a Marazayin in terms of those Yidden. There's an interesting Magen Avram I wanted to mention. Magen Avram speaks about garbage collectors, going collecting your garbage on Shabbos. Now in those days they didn't have paved floor, paved ground. So basically, when they collected your garbage, they used to use a kli with which to pick that up, the garbage up, and that would be mash v'gumois in the chatzir. And you'd be over, if one would do it on Shabbos, you'd be over in Baina, or in Chayrish, in a Sada it's Chayrish, in the house it's Baina. The Gemara differentiates. But either way, it's a malacha de'oraisa, and by now having a guy do it for you, it's a mir lakim and a malacha de'oraisa. Right? So let's say you did it as a kablonis. You're not over Amir Lakim. You made sure to be mekayim those two conditions of kotzatz, right? You set a price with the guy to do it for you, and you also made sure that he doesn't have to do it on Shabbos. Now this guy comes on his own volition on Shabbos, and he does it on Shabbos. There's a problem with Marazayin, right? Because even though you're inherently not being over Amir Lakim because you made sure that he has a choice not to do it on Shabbos, and you also gave him set a price, but there's a problem with Amir Lakim, of Marazayin, sorry. So how do you avoid Marazayin? You can't really avoid Marazayin because it's in front of your house. It's obviously the Hilchos Yisroel, and it's also not B'tzenah because it's outside in the Chatzir. So Magen Avram says like this. Magen Avram says that if it's a rabbin that are using this guy to do the same exact job for them as well through kablonis, so the Magen Avram says B'shal rabbim lekech hashada. If it's a rabbin doing this, there's no Marazayin when a bunch of people are doing the same exact thing. People are not choshid a rabbin for being over an iser. That's the Magen Avram's heter. The Magen Avram brings a raya from a Ramon Yeridea. The Ramon Yeridea says that it's usher for a person to own a statue, even though he's not being Oived Avodah Zarah, because of Marazayin. So the Ramon says, but if the statue belongs to a rabbin, then there's no problem of Marazayin, because people are not choshid a rabbin to do isurim. So the Magen Avram says, just like you see over there, in terms of a statue, where you're allowed, if it's a rabbin, a statue of a rabbin, you're allowed to keep it in your house because there's no Marazayin, because people are not choshid a rabbin. Who wadin? By Amir Lakim. If a bunch of people hire this guy to be a kablan, they're paying for the job to collect the garbage on Shabbos, even though it looks like Amir Lakim, it's no problem with Marazayin because it's Bishal Rabbin, because it belongs to a rabbin. So the Eli Rabbo says that's not a raya. Why? Because when you're dealing with the Isra of Avodah Zarah, that Ramon Yeridea is dealing with the Isra of Avodah Zarah. No one is going to be choshid a rabbin to be over Avodah Zarah, right? That's one of the Aseres HaDibros. So Noichi v'lo'iyah l'cha, everybody knows. But when you're dealing with Amir Lakim, which is only a D'Rabbanan, even if it's a rabbin using this guy, people will still be choshid the rabbin to be over and Isra D'Rabbanan. So he differentiates between the Ramon Yeridea and the Halach of Amir Lakim. The Ramon Yeridea is dealing with Avodah Zarah So in terms of Avodah Zarah, you could say if a rabbin owns a statue, then we're not choshed a rabbin from being over Avodah Zarah. But with Amir La'akum, it's only a D'Rabbanan, and not everybody's aware. With all the Prate Halachas of Amir La'akum, there, even a rabbin, there's Marasayin. And really, the Mishnah Brura, he brings the Magen Avraham, and he says, V'kol ha'achronim chalku olav, he doesn't really rely on this heter of Bishal Rabbim. He does say, even the Magen Avraham himself, who is Mechadish this heter, he compares it to the Ramon Yeridei we spoke about, even the Ram himself says that because now there's a Chil Hashem, when Goyim will see that a guy is doing malacha for you on Shabbos, he says, why is it a Chil Hashem? Very interesting. What's the Chil Hashem involved? The Chil Hashem is, he says, because Goyim themselves, when they have a holiday, they don't allow anyone to do malacha, not even a yid. B'yom idam, when they celebrate something, they're makbid. Maybe nowadays not. Nowadays takanat. Now it's we have more freedom. But in those days, when the Goyim celebrated their holiday, it was a holiday it's a national holiday for everybody, and no one is allowed to do malacha. So it's a Chil Hashem. Why? Because when they celebrate a holiday, we don't do malacha. But when we celebrate our Shabbos, so we're going to have them do malacha for us. It's a Chil Hashem. So therefore, the Magen Avraham himself, that says there's no problem of Marasayin, comes up with a new problem of Chil Hashem. Now this problem of Chil Hashem, I'm not sure if today, nowadays, there will be such a Chil Hashem, because nowadays the Goyim themselves aren't makbid that Yiddish shouldn't do malach on their holiday. Right? It's only because in those days the Goyim were makbid that nobody should do malacha. So here we have to be makbid also that we shouldn't do malacha with anybody else. Nobody should do malacha for us on our holiday, on our Shabbos. Right? But anyways, even this problem of Chil Hashem in those days, Rabbi Akiva Eiger was chaylik on this Magen Avraham. The Rabbi Akiva Eiger is not printed in all Shulchan Aruchs. It's not in the old Madura. It's in the Madura and the new Mechad Yerushalayim's. They reprinted Rabbi Akiva Eiger with new and rare stuff. So there they bring down Rabbi Akiva Eiger says this Magen Avraham that there's no problem of Chil Hashem if a guy does malacha in a mutter dig away for a yid, but there's no problem with Alakim like we spoke. There's no problem of Marasayin either. And there's no problem with Chil Hashem. No such thing as Chil Hashem. The big question of the Magen Avraham, which I'd like to share with you, I don't have an answer to this, but the Magen Avraham says that because the Goyim on their holiday, the Magen Avraham says because the Goyim on their holiday don't allow to do anyone malacha for them, we also have to be like them and not allow anyone to do malacha for us. That's seems to be a contradiction of here in the Ramah and Simchav Kafei Aleph and Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. And the Ramah says like this, I'll read it to you. A lot of people eat Erev Rosh Hashanah kaidem alei shachar. The halach is we fast in Erev Rosh Hashanah at least until Chatzos. So the Ramah brings down that there's a minhag to eat before Alois, before the fast on Erev Rosh Hashanah, before Alois, we should eat. Why? B'shem chukas amen. Shahanoyagim lesanes be'erev chagayim, because they used to fast be'erev chagayim. So basically, we're trying to be not like the Goyim, because the Goyim used to fast before their holiday. So therefore, we want to be in contrast with the Goyim. We don't want to be like the Goyim. So we're going to eat before the holiday. We can't eat before Rosh Hashanah because the minhag is to fast. So at least we can eat before Alois HaShachar. Right? So here this Ramah is mavur that we're trying always not to be like the Goyim. So you could say, what I mean, Chil Hashem. Right? So Chil Hashem, the Goyim fast before their Chag. And of course we should fast before our Chag, right? And the Ramah says, no, it's b'chikasem le'salechu. We're going to try not to do that. Even when we have to fast, we'll wake up before Alois and not fast. So there's also really a question on the Magen Avraham. But I don't think that this Magen Avraham is Negei Lamaisi, because nowadays there isn't Chil Hashem, again, like we said, because nowadays the Goyim themselves aren't makbid that we shouldn't work on their holiday. Okay, now we come across, that's Kabbalas. That's when you pay a guy to do a specific job for you. Now we're going to come across, what if you pay a guy a weekly salary, or a monthly salary, a yearly salary, a schir chaydesh, a schir shana? Is there a problem of Amir Lakim? Is there a problem if the guy does malacha? If you pay him a weekly salary and he does malacha on Shabbos for you, is that considered shlichus? And is there a problem of Amir Lakim? Right, so far we spoke about kablonas, if you pay him for the job. We spoke about arisas, if you give him a percentage of the profits. We spoke about schir yoyim, if you pay him by the day, that's for sure a problem. What if you pay him by the week or month or year? Is that a problem of Amir Lakim? Is there shlichus? So, the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Reish Mem Daled Sefei, he says that this is machlokes Rambam and Ravid. The Rambam says that there's no problem of shlichus when you hire a guy for the year. The Ravid says there is. Now, I want to keep track here because the machlokes Mogen Avram and Taz, which is Negei Halacha, what exactly are the Rambam and Ravid arguing in? In which case? The Taz learns that the case of Schir Shana that the Rambam and Ravid are arguing in is when you hire him to do malacha for you every single day of the year. Meaning, if he misses on Shabbos, if he misses work on Shabbos, there's going to be a hefset to the Yisroel. Now, the Yisroel makes it clear with him, listen, you don't have to work on Shabbos, of course, because if he has to, that's shlichus. So, of course, the Yisroel makes it clear that you don't have to work on Shabbos. Nevertheless, when he doesn't work on Shabbos, and if he doesn't work on Shabbos, there's going to be a loss, a hefset to the Jew. So here, the Taz learns, that's the machlekes Rambam and Ravid. The Rambam learns, even though there's going to be a hefset for the Jew, and really the Jew is losing, and he wants the guy to do malach on Shabbos, but he tells him, hey, don't worry about it, Johnny. But really he wants it to do malacha because he's losing money. So the Rambam says, nevertheless, it's not a problem of shlichus. If he actually does it, it's not a problem. Whereas the guy, the Ravid learns that it is a problem. Since the guy is losing out, the Yid is losing out, he has a hefset if the guy doesn't work, that's a problem of shlichus because inherently, even though the Yid is telling him, don't worry about it, but since he's losing money, right, so he really does want him to work for him on Shabbos, and therefore it is a problem of shlichus. That's the machlokes Rambam and Ravid. That's how the Taz learns. The Mogen Avram learns, no. If there's a hefset for the Jew, if the guy shouldn't work on Shabbos, there would be a hefset for the Yisroel, even the Rambam agrees that's asr. That's shlichus, because when the guy starts working on Shabbos, the Yid really wants him, he's cheering him on, please work on Shabbos, there's a problem of shlichus. So what's the machlokes Rambam and Ravid? Machlokes Rambam and Ravid is when there is no hefset for the Yid, if the guy doesn't work on Shabbos. If there's no hefset for the Yid, if the guy doesn't work on Shabbos, there's a machlokes Rambam and Ravid. The Rambam learns there's no hefset, and he doesn't have to work on Shabbos, and if he doesn't have to work on Shabbos, no hefset, no problem. So if he does, there's no problem of Amir Lakum. The Ravid learns, no. Even when there's no hefset, if the guy wouldn't work, there wouldn't be a hefset for the Yisroel, but if the guy does work, it would be a problem of shlichus and Amir Lakum. Why are we choishish so much? There's no hefset for the Yid, right? There's no hefset for the Yid if he doesn't work on Shabbos. So if he decides to work on his own volition, right? There's no hefset, he doesn't have to. The guy tells him you don't have to work on Shabbos. The Yid is not losing out. So why is there a problem of shlichus over here? So the Ravid explains because maybe tomorrow you'll have more work for him. Tomorrow you have a new job, you have an emergency situation, and you'll need him desperately for that job. And had he not worked on Shabbos, you wouldn't have been able to have him for this job on Sunday. So now you're having anah, retroactively you'll be having anah from the job they did on Shabbos, because now he's available for the job you need him to do on Sunday. So that's why we're choishish for such a scenario, and therefore the Ravid asers altogether for a guy to work for a Yid on Shabbos if you're paying by the week or by the month. Now it's a pretty far-fetched chashash. I mean, the guy's not hired to work for you every single day. He's basically hired to work for you whenever you need him. Now I have to be choishish that the very next day I'll need him, and to the point where if you wouldn't have worked on Shabbos, I would have lost out. It's a little bit of a far-fetched chashash. So the Arugas Abayzim very interestingly says, we saw in Amir Lakim, first year, we began with the Machlokes Rishonim, whether Amir Lakim is a deraisa or the Rabbanon. Right, the Smag, we mentioned the Smag learns it's a deraisa. So Arugas Abayzim says the Ravid learns like the Smag that it's a deraisa, and therefore Sofik the deraisa, l'chomra, there's a Sofik that tomorrow you're going to need him for that job. So you have to be machmer and be choishish for that Sofik, and therefore not allow him to work on Shabbos. Whereas the Rambam, we saw the Rambam learns it's only Kadesh Day, like Shabbos, Kala, Beinayim, whatever, that's only the Rabbanon, Zilzal Shabbos. So therefore the Rambam is not choishish for this chashash, and he is matter as long as, again, he doesn't have to work on Shabbos, and you're not losing if he doesn't work on Shabbos. To be choishish that tomorrow you're going to need him, and therefore retroactively you're going to be benefiting from the work they did on Shabbos, because now you have him available for this work. To That the Rambam is not choishes for, and Lamaisa, that's the way we pass. We pass like this Rambam. Those people that have housekeepers, I don't know how common it is. You know, you have housekeepers, you pay her, she lives in the house, she does malachas, and you know, she does all sorts of things. You know, washes laundry, washes dishes, all these things that are also do on Shabbos. And the Ramah says that it's also for her to do malacha for you on Shabbos. Why? Because there, where she's hired to do all sorts of malachas for you, there your avada going to have a hefsed if she doesn't do it on Shabbos, because by Sunday you need her for other things.
She's doing stuff for Shabbos, on Shabbos.
Right.
And it doesn't make a difference for Sunday.
Well, if she's not going to do it on Shabbos, then when is she going to do it?
But it's specifically work stuff that you need to be done on Shabbos, for Shabbos itself. But if you don't do it on Shabbos, then you're not going to get it done. And it's just
that's even worse, because then you want to do the mamish. Yeah, it's with Shabbos. That's even worse. But even if it's not for Shabbos, it's also also why? Because by tomorrow you want it to work. You want it to work Sunday. You have more laundry, whatever you have. You know, your floors are dirty again. You need to wash it again. So the Ramah says clearly that that's for sure, hands down. That's for sure usher. The Mishnah Brura there brings a Rabbeinu Simcha. Just get the Mishnah Brura for a second. She brings Rabbeinu Simcha, who is done. Is she allowed to do her own work for herself? Is she allowed to turn on her television in her room that she has? Is she allowed to do malacha for herself? She's definitely not allowed to do malacha for a yid. Definitely not. Even if the yid doesn't ask her to do it. Because there's definitely going to be a hefsed if she doesn't. And therefore, when she does, the yid is having a no, and it's like she is his shliach. So it's not definitely also. So now he brings Rabbeinu Simcha. What about doing her own malacha? Ein betaz, the maybe b'shem Rabbeinu Simcha, the ho'oiser lahashivcha afilu lasas malachas atzma bebeis baleo, even to do her own malacha. Because people will think that she's doing malacha for the Yisrael's Mar Zion.
But she can't keep Shabbos.
Right, she's not Goyish Shabbos Chayav Misa, she can't keep Shabbos.
Surely she can do malacha in her own room.
Right, so if it's in her own room, in other words, if she's in the kitchen, she wants to bake herself something, you know what I mean? So that's us, because we're not going to be able to differentiate if she's doing it for herself or for the Yisrael. But if she's in her own room and she's putting on her television for herself, and we know that, you know, you're Erlich Yid, and you don't watch television, and you don't let your children watch television, so of course,
They watch television on Shabbos.
On Shabbos. Then he brings, the Mishnah brings, the Melechus Atzma Mutter. He says there's no problem with Mar Zion here. Right, and then he brings, like you're saying, that in the room, he says like this, he says, to wash her own clothes, right? She has different type of clothes, everybody knows it's her own clothes, and she's sitting and washing her own clothes. There is no problem Mar Zion for sure, because everybody's nicker, there everybody knows that she's doing her own malacha. So again, that's only as far as Mar Zion is concerned. Right? If she's doing her own malacha, is there a problem of Mar Zion? But definitely do malacha for the Yisrael, that's definitely usher. I know Rabbi Kaplan of the Mir, you know, my wife's from Los Angeles, so whenever I go to LA, he comes to LA often. The shiur he gives for the community is always Namir La'akum, because in LA, Los Angeles is very prevalent, people have housekeepers, and people are totally unaware of the halachas of Amir La'akum. And this is really, really common. Now we're dealing with Malechas Atzma Ha'isa, right? A guy is allowed to do Me'ikra Din. When there's no problem of Mar Zion, a guy is allowed to do Malechas Atzma in the house of a Yid. Now what do we consider Malechas Atzma? What's considered Malechas Atzma? So of course, washing her begodim, that's Malechas Atzma, it's for sure Malechas Atzma. Right? Turning on the television in her room for herself, that's also Malechas Atzma. Whatever is Nicker, that's Malechas Atzma, that's for sure Mutter. But there's a Chiddush in the Taz, in Siman Reish Ayin Vav, later on. The Taz has a tremendous Chiddush. The Taz says that let's say she's washing your dishes in a heter dig way. she's washing dishes without turning on the hot water, right? No dishwasher, cold water, with diluted soap, no problem of bubbles or anything, of moiled, whatever, nothing, just everything is b'derech hayashar. She's washing dishes, no problem, not being over any yisur in the process. But it's kind of dark in the kitchen. She needs more light. She turns on the light. So the Taz says that that's considered Malechas Atzma. It's not considered Malechas Yisroel. It's not considered Tzarech Yisroel. The dishes she's washing for the Yisroel. She has to wash dishes, right? To do her job properly, she has to wash dishes, but with light. So the light that she turns on is for herself. Big chiddush. That's what Taz says. Again, it means that if you ask a guy to do malacha for you, a malacha shel heter, in the process, you know that in order for the guy to be able to accomplish that malacha effectively, he will need to be over an isser. That isser that will facilitate him to do malacha shel heter for you, that isser will be considered l'tzarech hagay, not l'tzarech ha'yisrael. I once had a fellow, he asked me, he said to me, he said he's going to a hotel for Shabbos, and he wants to ask his housekeeper to come along to watch his kids. Now he doesn't want his housekeeper to sleep over there, he wants his housekeeper to come Shabbos afternoon. How's she going to come Shabbos afternoon? She's going to drive, right? So is he allowed to ask the guy, his housekeeper, to come and watch his kids Shabbos afternoon when he knows that in order to accomplish that, she'll have to drive in a car to get over there? So I told him this Taz. The Taz says that if you were asking the guy to do a malacha shel heter for you, what are you asking the guy? You're asking, please watch my kids. Now whatever the guy has to do in order to get there, in order to be able to do that malacha that you asked him to do for you, that's none of your business. That she's doing for herself. She decided she wants to watch her kids. Now in order to get there, she has to go and drive. That's for herself. Hilchos Shabbos.
So regarding doing the actual dishes itself, malacha shel heter, could she go and do it, put it in the dishwasher?
That's a good shiloh. That's a very good shiloh. That you can't use the Taz for. The Tzvaras of Taz won't work. That you could use a different Tzvar. There's a different heter for that. We'll get there. The heter is that any time the guy could do it, but if in a heter, the guy himself decides to do it, but if in a isser, there's also no problem according to some poskim. But that heter is not the Taz's heter. The Taz just says that if in the process, in order to get to your malacha, there will be isurim done to be able to accomplish whatever he needs to accomplish, that malacha, there the Taz says that's a different heter, because here you ask him to wash dishes, so that's the malacha itself. So if you decide to wash in the dishwasher, the Taz is not going to help you, because you're asking to do that. But the Taz's heter is a different heter. The Taz says that in order to, if it's just facilitating you to do the malacha shel heter, even if it's an isser, it's not a problem. That's the Taz. So, in terms of, asking someone to babysit your kids, and the guy's going to have to drive, or let's say, for example, the Hilchos Shabbos speaks of a case where you ask the guy, please bring over a platter of food to a friend of mine, and you know that he is going to have to drive to bring it. So that, of course, even the Taz won't help you. Why? Because if the only way to bring it is through driving, and you're asking him to bring it, then basically you ask him to drive. If you ask him to do a totally independent malacha, if you ask him to just watch your kids, right? That's independent of getting there. You're asking him to watch your kids. So by getting there, that the Taz says, since it's independent of what you asked him to do, it's just facilitating him to do that, that's okay. But if you're really asking him to drive it over there, you're just using it's just a matter of semantics. You're using, can you bring it over there? Right? That's the thing that you're asking. That definitely is a problem.
Even though he could have walked. If there was a chance he could have walked to do it.
Very good. If there's a chance you could have walked, that's like your other shiloh with a dishwasher and washing dishes with your hands. That if you could have done it with malechas official heter, then you could ask him to.
If going back to the first case, if it's completely impossible, there's no light whatsoever, the only way to do the dishes would be with the light, then would that not be like you're asking them to turn on the light now?
It's a big machlokes, yes, and very good. It's a big machlokes. It's not clear in the Taz. If it's impossible, without the light that she's turning on, it's impossible to wash dishes. I think that probably the longest ha'ara in Hilchos Shabbos, Chelik Beis is probably on this Shaila, on this how to learn this Taz. But I do believe that we're Mekel. That even if there's no other way the guy could have done it, since what you asked him was a Melecha Shel Heter, we're not concerned if in the process he's going to have to be over Asurim. As a matter of fact, now I'm reminded, I think there's some sort of tshuva of Rav Moshe. I'm going to attribute it to Rav Moshe for a lack of, I don't remember, I think he said it, that if you need a light on in a room, then you could ask a guy to go bring something from the room, and knowing that he'll turn on the light in the process, right? You can't ask him to turn on the light, it's in your lakum. But you could ask him to bring something from the room, and knowing, right, bring something from the room, to go get me a sefer, right? And you know that the guy's going to have to turn on the light in the process, then you can tell the guy, oh, don't turn it off. Did nothing wrong. Okay, so that's also, I'll be this Taz, because you're not asking the guy to do malach for you. But anyways, the reason why I bring it in here is because what's nichlol, what's included in the meleches atzma, by a shefcha, it's not necessarily only if she's washing her own clothes, sometimes she can be doing something for you when we still consider it meleches atzma. Okay.